What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be covering off 6 different pre-emergents that you could look at and consider for your lawn and or your flower beds this year. So we're going to go through each one. I'm only dedicating about a minute to each one, so this is going to be a quick overview. Now, I want you to make sure that you check the description below, but further, if you're looking into any of these herbicides, click on the links. Make sure you read through everything that has to do with the application rates, the type of grasses they can be applied to, and what sort of PPE you need to have in order to make sure that you're being safe when applying these herbicides. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So number one, we're going to talk about the most common that you're probably going to see out there, and that is prodiamine. Now, prodiamine is going to come in a liquid. It's going to come in coated on granular fertilizers or in a wettable sort of granule that you can put in, mix in backpacks and make it water soluble. That makes it very easy to apply. The use rate on prodiamine is about a half an ounce per thousand to get the most optimum control according to the label. And this is something that you can apply very soon, depending on what your soil temps are getting up to. So what you're going to find is most emergence is going to start happening after soil temperature reaches about 55 degrees, and that's when typically people are going to start applying their pre-emergence. With all pre-emergence, including this one, water is necessary. It's good to get at least a quarter to a half inch of water out, get that down into the ground, and make sure that it is going to get into contact with the soil so that it can start going to work. Prodiamine will not control already emerged weeds, and the target weeds that you're actually going on this to control are mainly going to be in the grass family. This is going after crabgrass primarily, annual bluegrass, goosegrass, spurge, things like that. That's really what's going to be on the label. So you're going to have a bit of a more minimal amount of weeds controlled with prodiamine, and really not many in the way of broadleaf. Hey, while we're at it, make sure that you subscribe, click down here, hit the like button, share this video, do all those kind of things. You might have neighbors that need some help, and you can just shoot this over to them and maybe they'll learn something. The next one on the list is Dithiopyr, also under the trade name Dimension. There's a number of other ones out there. This is also something that's sold in the generics market. A little bit different than prodiamine, as it does have some post-emergent effects if you put it out at the maximum rate. Dimension is also safe on all turf grasses. You can put that out across everything and feel confident that you're going to get control. Now, there are some things that could happen with root pruning on some warm season grasses, so it's very important to make sure, again, you read the label, know the application rate, make sure that you're putting it out on the proper grass that you have, and that you know what weeds are going after. If you are going at the higher rate of this material, you will get a bit of a post-emergent just on young, some weeds coming out like crabgrass. So if you did get out a little bit late, this can be a good option for you to still get control throughout the season if you are getting it out at the proper rate. Now, Dimension has a use rate of between a quarter of an ounce and 3/4 of an ounce, depending on what weeds you're targeting, and also if you're trying to get that post-emergent effect. Again, at the higher rate, that's when you're going to get the post-emergent effect if there are any small, very early stage plants starting to come up. So the next one we're going to talk about is Isoxaben. You may see this under the name of Gallery or Snapshot out in the marketplace. This is going to be more of a broadleaf control pre-emergent herbicide. So the list on this is extensive, but you're not going to get the same controls as you would with Dithiopyr or with prodiamine. Some of them kind of cross over, but as we're going down this top 3 list, the amount of weeds controlled gets longer and longer. So it's important to know and note what you're really trying to chase and what you're trying to control in your turfgrass environment. For instance, for me here, I don't use any pre-emergent herbicides, but the one that would be or make the most sense for my turfgrass in my area would be to put down something like Isoxaben, because I don't really deal with any sort of crabgrass up here. Annual bluegrass, I'm not really going to be able to see in my bluegrass lawn. It may show up, it may not, but it's very few and far between. So I'm not really worried about those particular grasses, which is why I wouldn't put out any prodiamine. So this would make more sense for somebody like me here. So again, check the label on this to make sure that your turf type is listed and that you're putting out the correct rate for your turf as well. You are going to have a range on this material between a quarter of an ounce per thousand up to a half an ounce per thousand, and this is going to give a long control. The beauty of it is that you're looking at controlling things like, again, around here, oxalis, spurge, dandelion, things like that, which is nice if you really need to get more coverage of broadleaf and you're less worried about grassy weeds. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and talk about number 4, which is oxadiazone. Now, that may not be something that you've used or heard of or anything like that in the past, mainly because it's not labeled for residential lawns. This is a product that we used years and years ago professionally in flower beds on established bedding areas. And it works fantastic for those types of areas. If you're talking about anything that is not turf related, your flower beds, your sort of maybe open walkways, edges against houses, things like that. This is a great material for that because it controls a lot of weeds and anything else that, don't plan on seeding, don't plan on doing anything like that, you're going to get some wonderful control. Application rate on oxadiazone in the liquid is 1.5 to 2.8 ounces per thousand. It is expensive and it is very effective. It is a good season-long control, and we always had tremendous success with this material for our flower bed applications for pre-emergent in that zone. So for me, where I would use this is basically in my gravel areas that are around the driveways, the flower bed, things like that. That's where this material will be going down for me, and just trying to hold up any of the weeds that can come through in those areas, which usually are kind of a pain in the butt. So number 5 on the list is pendimethalin. Now you'll see this labeled on halts, Scott's Halts Crabgrass Preventer. It is probably could be the highest volume material put out by residential do-it-yourselfers just because it's easily available. You look at that blue bag, you see it says Halts Crabgrass Preventer, you get it. That's its main target that it's going after in residential lawns. It is safe for bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, fine fescue, tall fescue, St. Augustine, and Bermuda grass. Main pickups on this are going to be barnyardgrass, canary grass, cheatgrass, crabgrass, things like that. You're kind of getting back into that grassy areas, but also chickweed, henbit, things like that. So that's one that you've probably seen. That's probably one that you've used without really even knowing it if you haven't been paying attention to what's on the label, which I definitely don't advise. Make sure you read every single label and know what you're putting out. So the last one I want to look at here and give you a little story on is corn gluten meal. About 15, 16 years ago, gosh, it might have been even longer than that, I actually used about 2 truckloads of this material in my professional lawn care service. I didn't really notice anything happen with it. It's just such a high rate. There's about 10% nitrogen in corn gluten meal that it just throws a big boost of N out there, which makes grass grow pretty healthy, but it also feeds every single thing out there as well. Now, in looking at that, really, the only reason that I think anybody would go this way is if they really wanted an organic control, but it's also a fertilizer. So, I mean, you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, sort of. It's very iffy on how well it works. The original studies at Iowa State in the 90s showed it had good grassy weed coverage. It would actually keep grassy weeds from germinating. Well, I shouldn't say that. It had good grassy weed control, not in the fact that it kept it from germinating, but it kept roots from forming, and that's really what it does. So it's good for established areas that way. However, when a graduate student at Oregon State went through and did this again in a 2-year study, they saw 0 control out of anything. They just saw that the grass was super thick and green, and so were all the weeds that were in it. So that's everything that I wanted to cover off today, just looking at some different options that you may have heard of, maybe you haven't heard of, on what you might be going after this year on your lawn and what weeds that you need to control. It is vitally important that you know what target pest you're going for so that you're not disappointed by the results that you get. If you're trying to control a certain broadleaf weed, but you're putting something out that has no broadleaf weed control and it's just targeted for grassy weeds, you're going to be disappointed. So it's good to make sure you measure that out, know exactly what you need to put down, why you need to put down, how much you need to put down, follow the label, follow the application rates, go after your target pest, and make sure it's safe for your own lawn. That's it. I'll talk to you guys real soon.